Well, Sean, I think President Trump is once again reflecting sentiment that President Reagan had in the 1980s. They both regretted the necessity of nuclear weapons. They dreamed of a world in which we might not have nuclear weapons. But as long as adversaries like communist Russia back in the day, and today Russia and communist China have nuclear weapons and they're rapidly expanding their arsenal and they're testing their weapons, the United States can't afford to unilaterally disarm. That we have to make sure that our nuclear arsenal is second to none, that it won't be overmatched by the combined forces of Russia and China, that our aging weapons are still usable, and that our new weapons are designed and made properly. So I agree with what President Trump has announced. It's only sensible that in a world when Russia and China are threatening the United States with a rapidly growing and novel nuclear arsenal, that we have to take steps to defend our way of life, because that's what our nuclear arsenal does. It truly defends our way of life.
I've been trying to avoid this particular topic, but it's getting more and more attention. After the Russians tested their intercontinental cruise missile, which is a nuclear-powered cruise missile, Donald Trump's response actually shocked all of us. And I've been trying to avoid this response, but one thing I've realized is that Americans continue to talk about the need for America to start testing nuclear weapons to deter Russia, to deter China. Now, many Russian politicians were disappointed because Donald Trump said there is need for America to start testing nuclear weapons again. So Trump perceived the test of Russian Dubrovnik cruise missile, which is nuclear-powered cruise missile, as the test of nuclear weapon, which is quite surprising. The fact that the engine is powered by nuclear doesn't mean it is a nuclear weapon. And the fact that a weapon has the capability to carry nuclear warheads doesn't mean it is a nuclear weapon. Americans have such weapons in their arsenals. Almost all cruise missiles can be equipped with nuclear warheads. Even the recent, Tomahawk that we continue to talk about in the media, Tomahawk missiles have the capability to carry nuclear warheads. So there is nothing wrong with it if the Russians produce a weapon and it have the capability to carry nuclear warheads. For example, the recent weapon the Russians produced, Orishnik. The Orishnik have the capability to carry both nuclear warheads and conventional warheads. There's nothing wrong with that. Even this weapon, what do you call it? Hypersonic missiles. Yes, hypersonic missiles have the capability to carry both nuclear and conventional warheads. So there is nothing wrong if there is a weapon that has the capability to carry both nuclear and conventional warheads. So it was quite disappointing. The response from the Americans was quite disappointing. I mean, it's quite interesting. I've been trying to avoid this topic for many reasons. But, by the way, I have no option but to talk about it because it continues to get more and more attention in the system. Well, let's dive deep. I hate to say this, but arm race is back. Currently, we are in arm race because after the Russians tested the Dubrovnik missile, Donald Trump instructed the defense companies to come up with an air defense system that can shoot down this Dubrovnik missile. The Wall Street Journal 2 days ago released an article explaining into details why this Dubrovnik missile is impossible to shoot down. So according to the Wall Street Journal, even with the new air defense system that Trump has instructed them to produce, cannot shoot down this Dubrovnik missile. Remember, the Dubrovnik missile just travel around 850 to 1,300 kilometers per hour. The Russians have missiles that can travel more than 10,000 kilometers per hour. That travel 10 times the speed of sound. Remember, the Russians have the zircon. So it is impossible to shoot down. The zircon travel the speed of sound. More than the speed, 10 times the speed of sound. Remember, they also have the avant-garde. And the most used one in the ongoing war, which is the Kinjal. They use it every day. The war in Ukraine has proven that shooting down this Kinjal is absolutely impossible. There is no air defense system today in Ukraine that can shoot down the Kinjal hypersonic missile. And note, almost all American air defense systems are in Ukraine, but they can't shoot it down. So America really have a long way to go. They have to come up with countermeasures to shoot down these Russian missiles, which They have a long way to go, but, basically, arms race is back, so they have to come up with measures. I hate to say this, but I don't think this is healthy for the whole world. So, we'll continue to see United States officials talking about, United States alone cannot engage in nuclear disarmament whilst their adversaries are engaged in, producing nuclear weapons. But who started violating all these nuclear disarmament programs? For example, the ABM Treaty. Who started violating it? Who pulled out of it back in 2001? It was the United States who decided to pull out of most of these deals that were meant to reduce nuclear weapons and some conventional weapons that have the capability of even carrying these nuclear warheads. Don't forget that ICBMs, there were an attempt back in 1970s. Right, they signed a program, the United States and the Soviet Union signed a program to make sure that they get rid of most of these intercontinental ballistic missiles. Because without intercontinental ballistic missiles, the United States and Russia cannot strike each other. So there were attempts by both countries to make sure that they reduce the production of ICBMs. So the ABM Treaty was meant for that. Then, back in 2001, United States thought the Russians were weak, so they decided to pull out of the treaty. Are you aware that if that treaty was still in place, the Russians wouldn't have been able to produce the Borovesnik missile which they tested recently? Because that treaty that treaty would have prevented the Russians from producing this particular missile. So, the issue that United States authorities keep talking about that, they cannot engage in nuclear disarmament alone. No, you started violating it. You started violating it because you thought nobody would get to your level. And, about 20-something years later, more and more countries are catching up today. They are producing more powerful weapons more than you. The big question I keep asking myself over and over again is, where exactly does the United States military budget go? Because their military budget is bigger than both Russia and China combined. So they should be far ahead of both Russia and China, because almost $1 trillion they spend on their military every year. How come that today the Russians are producing weapons that the Americans don't have? How come? How come today the Russians have missiles that America have no access to? How come that Russia today is the first country to use laser weapons in real combat? No, I'm shocked. Where does all the money go? Well, if you are new to the channel, subscribe is very, very important. And to our regular viewers, you are the main reason why I continue to do this. Hit on the like button. It's very, very important to me. Now, United States or Donald Trump, attempt to start testing nuclear weapons to deter other countries is dangerous for United States herself. Because currently there is a treaty that prevents most countries from, testing nuclear weapons, because it's very dangerous for the whole world. Now, the moment United States start testing, then they open the corridor for other countries to go ahead and start testing these nuclear weapons themselves. So, whatever China have now, they are in third place. This will help the Chinese to accelerate very fast to get to the level of the Russians and Chinese. Who is next? We don't know. Maybe North Korea will also start testing. And very soon they will get to your level. So if you think that the testing is going to help United States climb higher, I think this is a big mistake by Donald Trump. It is rather going to help the countries who don't have enough to rather get to the level of you guys. In fact, I don't think any country in its right senses would think about invading United States. I don't think so. North Korea has made it clear that if the United States don't attack them with a nuclear weapon first, they have no intention of attacking United States with nuclear weapons. Now, talking about nuclear weapons, there's no country on earth here that has ever used nuclear weapons in real combat. It is the United States who has ever used nuclear weapons in real combat in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So no country has ever used them. Remember, the main reason why other countries started producing these nuclear weapons is when the United States decided to unleash little boy on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That was when other countries realized that they need this weapon badly. Note, the very scientists who helped the United States to produce these nuclear weapons are the same people who gave the blueprint of these nuclear weapons to the Soviet Union, because they realized that United States was becoming more and more dangerous. They realized that giving this weapon to just one country will make other countries slaves. So to balance the world, they decided to hand over this nuclear weapon blueprint to the Soviet Union. Remember, most of them were arrested. Some of them were executed in electric chairs in the United States. Some people were sent to jail in Britain. But they don't care, because they call it espionage. They said, they betrayed their country by giving the nuclear weapon program to the Soviet Union. But when you listen to all the scientists, what they were saying made a lot of sense. Because after unleashing this weapon on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it became more dangerous for only United States to possess this weapon. And when you look at the real intention behind America unleashing this nuclear weapon on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it was quite funny, because Japan had already surrendered, because Japan was already on their way to surrender. So there was no need for America to unleash this nuclear weapon on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The main reason why they did this was the Soviet Union. Yes, they supported the Soviet Union back in the war against the Germans. But they were scared, because the Soviet Union was becoming a superpower, was becoming more and more influential. They were becoming more and more powerful. Even during the war, they were allies, yet they were scared of the rapid, growth of the Soviet Union, because nobody was able to confront Hitler. The only people that were able to confront Hitler was the Soviet Union. So they were scared of them. And in attempt to warn the Soviet Union, they decided to unleash this nuclear weapon on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. When Putin took over, Putin really wanted both the United States and Russia to enforce this nuclear disarmament program, to make sure that both countries don't risk, these nuclear weapons or end up in nuclear confrontation. So Putin really wanted to do this, because part of the reason was Russia was broke by then, so Russia really wanted to focus on developing their country. They wanted to spend their money on their citizens. But the US was in a better position, so they didn't care. They decided not to listen to Putin. Well, little did they know that in some few years' time, Russia's economy will stabilize, and these guys will start producing more and more powerful weapons. Note, basically, the Soviet Union was all about Russia. So most of the Soviet research and whatever they intended doing, everything was inherited by Russia. So most of these weapons they're producing today, the program didn't start today. It started back in the Soviet era. By the way, we all pray that these leaders realize the danger of what they are currently doing, because arms race is not healthy for the whole world. We want the whole world to be calm. We don't want these two superpowers confronting each other, because nobody is going to survive. There is no winner in nuclear war. So this whole idea that I want to build more powerful nuclear weapons, the point is there is no winner in nuclear war. No, you will not live to tell whether your nuclear weapon was more powerful than your opponent's own or not, because today's nuclear weapons are times 100, times 1,000 bigger than whatever was unleashed on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. By the way, thank you very much for watching this video once again. What do you think? Let me know down in the comment section. It's very, very important. Let me know, what do you think about this whole nuclear weapon deal? Let me know. It's very, very important to me. Your opinion is very, very important. Thank you Once again, shalom. See you guys in the next episode.